Do you want to stay more focused on the right goals in your life, or even just figure out what the right goals are for you? Do you want clarity? Do you want better work-life balance? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Success Through Failure.
Welcome to the Success Through Failure podcast, the show that reveals failure as your path to success. You'll listen to intriguing interviews with some of the most successful people on the planet and learn how their failures became a launchpad for success and how yours can too. Here's your host, former Division I All-American wrestler, former Division I head coach, speaker, and personal coach, Jim Harshaw.
Welcome to another episode of Success Through Failure. Today I bring you John Jantz. If you're looking for more clarity and focus in your life, if you're looking to get clear on your goals and learn how to create a plan to achieve them, then join me and 5 other motivated high performers to learn a powerful 4-step system starting October 24th. It's called Reveal Your Path, and I've now guided dozens of high performers through it, including Olympians and neurosurgeons, MBAs, college coaches, and others, resulting in clarity, awesome focus, and powerful transformation. And they found the clarity that they were looking for to take massive action in their lives. They were already working hard. It's like they had a shovel in their hands and they were digging, they were going to work, but now they're digging their hole in the right place. If you want to find more time in your day and restore work-life balance to your world, then do yourself a favor and at the very least, take a look at what you'll learn by going to revealyourpath.com today. That's revealyourpath.com. And if you have questions, let's jump on a quick phone call. Just email me at jim@jimharshawjr.com and we'll set up a time to chat. John is a marketing consultant, speaker, and best-selling author. He's been called the world's most practical small business marketing expert. Now, a little side note, a lot of people can say that, but not a lot of people can say what I'm about to say right now. His blog was chosen as a Forbes favorite for marketing and small business, and his podcast, which is a top 10 marketing show on iTunes, was called a must-listen by Fast Company magazine. Huffington Post calls him one of the top 100 must-follow people on Twitter, and Forbes named his website, which is ducttapemarketing.com, one of the 100 best websites for entrepreneurs. He's the featured marketing contributor to the American Express Open Forum, and he's a popular presenter for organizations including American Express, Intuit, Verizon, HP, and Citrix. He's often cited as a resource in publications such as the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and CNN Money. We're going to get a lot of good stuff out of this episode, so if you don't have time to listen to the entire thing, or if you hear something you like but you don't have time to write it down, make sure you grab your free copy of the action plan from this episode and get access to all the action plans from every interview by going to jimharshawjr.com/action. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jim.
I should let the listener know that John is like a celebrity to me. I've been following John and listening to his podcast since, I guess, 2006. So some of the earliest episodes of John's podcast. So John, it's an amazing show. You've been going for a long time. You've got to be one of the longest running podcasts out there. Am I right?
I suspect I could be, just because there were a lot of people that jumped into it around then, but a lot of people let it go as social media came on. I mean, now obviously you know everybody's doing it, but I don't know how to research that, but maybe I am.
Yeah, I got to imagine there's one other podcast that I listened to way back when, and that was Flow Wrestling, one of the Flow podcasts. So for the listener, if you're interested in that interview, I interviewed Martin Floriani in episode 38. So jimharshawjr.com/38. But listen to your podcast for a long time. Still one of my top podcasts to listen to. First blog, I think the first blog I've ever read, and you actually inspired me to start my first blog years ago, probably 05, 06. First marketing book that I ever read, Duct Tape Marketing. So I do recommend everything that John puts out there. Great content, amazing content. I think everybody has that little seed of entrepreneur in them, so I definitely recommend checking out John's content. Now, marketing is not just for small business owners. I mean, this is for the sports coaches listening, the teachers, anyone who helps, who either runs an organization or helps to run an organization. And for those of you who, if you're not an entrepreneur or a leader in your company, you have that little seed of entrepreneurship in you. I just really believe everybody does. So this is going to be an episode packed with actionable stuff. That's one of John's really hallmarks is the practical information that he shares. So one of the first things, John, that I learned from you is that no matter what business you're in, you are a marketer and you're in the marketing business. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think it's both a good news and bad news for a lot of people. But obviously, the purpose of a business is to attract and keep a customer, and in some form, I mean, whatever we might want to call marketing, actual practices in some form. I mean, we're all marketers. Every business is a marketing business or it doesn't have a customer. And without a customer, it's not a business. And so, I think I say that mainly, not to convince somebody that marketing has to be the only thing they think about and do, but that certainly you can't ignore it. You can't abdicate it. You have to actually make it an essential part of how you build and grow a business, or you won't be around very, very long. And, the challenge for a lot of folks is that doesn't necessarily come natural to them. I mean, they started a plumbing business or an accounting business because they knew how to do the thing that business did. And then pretty quickly found that if they didn't go out and find people who needed that thing, or they didn't go out and find a way to show how they were different than everybody else who said they were a plumber and an accountant, then they were not going to be around very long doing the thing they love doing.
So why would you say most businesses fail? I mean, there's different statistics out there depending on who you read or what stat you read. There's that most businesses fail in X number of years. And so in your opinion, what's the biggest reason for that? And I'm not teeing you up. Maybe it's marketing. Maybe it's something totally different. I'm curious, actually. What do you think? Because we talk a lot about failure in this show, and we're going to get a little bit into the mindset of that here in a little bit. But what do you think? Why do you think most businesses fail?
Well, I've never experienced any failure, so this is going to be a very short show.
Right. Yeah, of course. You'll be the first guest who said that.
There's probably a handful of reasons. The first one is that we really get in love with our idea and we run out there and say, well, why didn't everybody else fall in love with our idea? So I think one of the reasons people fail is there's just not a match to a market that needs something. That's number one. Number two, a lot of businesses fail because they really don't discover or create a way to stand out or differentiate themselves. And so consequently, they're constantly fighting the price battle, the commodity battle. And I would say the third reason that businesses fail is that I think sometimes people underestimate how much work this is, and that if you're not really passionate about what you're doing, and this is not a cry for go out and find the thing you're passionate about and do it, but if you're not passionate about the work of the business and about learning how to do it better, then you're going to get tired of it pretty quickly, because very, very few cases do things magically happen without you evolving and changing and adopting and adapting and learning and growing and really in some ways, figuring out, what the business really is, rather than going out there and telling people what the business is.
So 3 things you just mentioned there, and for the listener, I'll have these in the action plan, jimharshawjr.com/action to find that. But you mentioned finding the match to the market, matching, your passion or what you're good at, what you want to start a business doing to the market, and finding a way to stand out. And then the third part that I want to key on here is a lot of people underestimate how much work it is. And I think that's the case with everything in life. People want to be good at something, whether it's business or politics or showbiz or becoming a musician, anything, athletics. I think people just kind of look at successful people and they say, well, it was easier for them, right? Well, if that person can start a business, well, I can do that. They're a plumber, or they started a restaurant and they have a background as a chef or something like that. I can start a restaurant too. But you don't realize all the struggle, all the questions. It's not a matter of just follow these simple steps and boom, a business is born and it's booming and it's successful. There's going to be struggle and failure along the way. And John, I've watched as your business has grown tremendously over the years. I mean, Talk a little bit about how much work it's been for you to get from where you were to now. You have a system, a marketing system where there are other, you train and certify other marketers and consultants to implement the duct tape marketing system. I mean, what's that been like for you?
Well, I like to really, I think the analogy of sports is really a good one for business. And athletes, even if they have talent, they will all tell you to a person, with rare exception, that they got good because they practiced. And I think that is, in a lot of ways, what we're doing in our businesses. A lot of cases. I mean, a lot of people associate me as a writer today. Well, I didn't train to be a writer. I enjoy it. I wanted to be a writer, but the reason I am now, written 5 books is because I just started writing. I found somebody that would let me send them free articles 25 years ago, and I started a blog, and I cringe when I look at my posts from 2003. I've now written over 4,000 blog posts. And so I'm actually a pretty decent writer now, or at least people tell me that, or people feel like they get value out of what I write. But I think that idea of practice, of actually just doing it, I can apply that to numerous things. I never saw myself as a public speaker. I now make what some people would call a good living just doing that element of the business, which is a very small part of our business. But I did it by saying, yeah, I'll go out and talk to this group and I'll learn how to do it. And I was terrible at first. And I really didn't know how to structure a talk. I'd have no training in it. But it was something that I realized could help my business, could help my career. And so I just did it. I figured out how to do it. And I think that to me, in a lot of ways, is the entrepreneurial spirit, is that you figure out what is going to, or at least what you think is going to work for your business. And then you go out and you just do it. You learn how to do it. And then, of course, the real hallmark is, and then you figure out how to delegate it. And get somebody else to do elements of the business, because that's really the only way you're going to truly grow an entrepreneurial business.
Yeah, and you come from the Michael Gerber family tree, am I right?
Yeah, very much so.
E-Myth.
I actually was trained as an E-Myth consultant back in the 90s, and Michael, I stayed in contact enough with him. He was kind enough to write, as you might recall, the foreword to my first book, Duct Tape Marketing. And really that, a lot of people ask me, where was the turning point in my business and my idea for my business? And that I do owe a lot of credit to Michael. He was one of the first people writing to the small business about this idea of process and systems. And, in working with the E-Myth folks and using the E-Myth methodology, it certainly was the first time that it occurred to me that was the problem with small business. But I tell you, the problem was really deep in marketing because in a lot of ways you could teach a business owner or get them to wrap their heads around the idea that they needed a system to make their product, or to even to hire somebody, or to get a bill paid. But then you talk about a system for marketing, and it was like this was strange genie in a bottle. And I think that realization that what the world needed was to teach small business owners that marketing is a system. In fact, it may be the most important system in a business, really was the turning point for my entire career, at least the last couple decades.
I want to go a little deeper on the system concept and the system that you've developed with the 7 steps for marketing. But first, did you say 4,000 blog posts?
That was a while ago. Have you been fixated on that?
That was a while. I wrote that down because I wanted to come back to it. But 4,000 blog posts, and you told me before we get on the interview here, over 500 interviews on your podcast. I mean, so I used to write. Actually, I've written. I've had my blog for 13 years now, and for the first 8-9 years, I wrote a blog post every day but Sunday. Wow.
And so that's how I got to 4,000. I now have scaled that back. We now take guest posts on our site for a part of the content, and so I'm focused on trying to write one really kind of long, in-depth post a week now. So I've cut that back substantially as my business has grown. But I think that's a great example, going back to some of what we were talking about earlier about the idea of practice. I mean, that to me was how I became a better speaker. That's how I became a better salesperson. It ultimately turned into books for me. But did it in many ways because I knew I was building an asset. I mean, in the early days, I don't think too many people were reading my blog, but I kept plugging away at it because I saw it as a significant part of what was coming, this whole inbound marketing world, and that people were going to turn to search engines. I was turning to search engines to find everything that I wanted. I knew we'd get to that point, or at least I felt it. And so, I made that investment in the early days because I believed that something was going to pay off. But now I would say that those 4,000 blog posts amount to an asset for my business as sure as any building that I could have built.
Yeah, no question. It's that consistency that you see successful people have consistent. They're consistent, whether it's athletics or business or anything else. The common theme among successful people is consistency. They show up every day. For the listener, if you've read the book Slight Edge, we've talked about this book before on the show. It's just a matter of, it's these small things done incrementally over and over time that really create success. It's not just one thing that you can do to create success. It's these small things done repeatedly over a period of time, whether it's I've got a wrestling background, whether it's practicing wrestling every day or writing blog posts every day or anything else, practicing an instrument. That's how success happens. And it's interesting how, you consider yourself not a particularly talented public speaker, but now that's what it's a big part of your business and a big part of a lot of the way you spend your time. When I started, I consider myself not a very good public speaker as well, and I certainly don't have the experience that you do, John. But I knew that it was a weakness that I had, and I decided to take action on it. So this is several years ago now. And so I signed up for Toastmasters. And actually, the reason I signed up for it is because I had to speak at an event one time, and I was just so nervous. And, man, I felt like I made a fool of myself because I couldn't stand there and just speak well. And I'm like, man, I got to do something about this. So I heard about the Charlottesville. So I signed up for Toastmasters. I was in there for about 9 months and practicing speaking and public speaking. And then I had an opportunity. It's funny how these opportunities come up whenever you sort of start down a path. And the Charlottesville TEDx event, which is one of the largest TEDx events in the world, there was an opportunity to apply for that. So I sent in a submission for that just on a whim, literally heard the ad on the radio one morning, submitted my application, a 2-minute video, and out of 65 people who applied, 25 of us got chosen to speak at an open mic night in front of 500 people in the audience. Of those, the 500 people they got to vote for one community member. I ended up being the community member. I won that night, and I got to speak on the main stage in front of 1,000 people, and I got to do this TEDx event. So it's interesting when you take action to make something happen, opportunities just arise around you. So start moving for the listener. Whatever it is that you want to do, whatever it is you want to achieve, start moving down the path, and opportunities are going to arise that you don't even know are out there. And then being consistent, following through and executing over a period of time. Now, so John, I'm sorry to jump around here a little bit, but I do want to go back to you talked about a system, right? You talked about, we talked about Michael Gerber, and for the listener, there's a great book called The E-Myth, which is a great book for any entrepreneur. But it's evident that you believe in systems in the way you run your business, and you have sort of I guess you would call this sort of a high-level system that you recommend for entrepreneurs. You talk about the 7 steps for marketing your business. Can you kind of go through those at a sort of 30,000-foot view real quick?
Yes, I can, but I want to back up a little bit. That I believe that anybody who's going to do any consulting any way to stand out, you have to have your unique point of view. If you are going to be a coach, or you're going to be a consultant, you're going to be an advisor of some type. I mean, I think you have to find a way to say, here's how I believe this is done, and really kind of have that point of view that you can point to. For me, the big idea of duct tape marketing was that marketing is a system. I mean, that in a lot of ways was a big interrupt from how other people had talked about marketing. So that alone, in some ways, was a differentiator and a point of view. And I have to tell you, I accidentally sort of bumped into to this. Like I say, I think, 10 years, 15 years later, it was the best decision I ever made from a business standpoint. But I actually created this approach because I had been doing business in the very traditional way as a marketing consultant, which means I would walk in and say, what do you need? Sure, I can do that. I'll make a proposal. We'll get working. And found that it was kind of frustrating. I mean, you were always making it up. You were always having to change the price. What about this part, that part? They didn't really know what they needed, but they thought they did. I mean, and so it was in a lot of ways kind of frustrating, and the sales cycle was very long. And so I said, if I'm going to work with small businesses that don't have the budgets, don't have the attention span, that you're constantly having to kind of go back and forth on how you're going to do this and how you're going to do that, if I'm going to make a living working with small business owners, which I absolutely love to do. And that's I wanted to figure that out because I love working with small business owners. I said to myself, I have to create a way where I can walk in and say, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what you're going to do. Here are the results we hope we can get. By the way, here's what it costs. And that approach was really an attempt to solve my great frustration of trying to work with small business owners. And what I quickly found out, and this is magical when you can do this. Like I said, it was an accident for me, but it's magical when you can intentionally do this. What I found out is I was actually addressing one of the greatest frustrations of small business owners. It's actually, as a small business owner, hard to buy marketing services. Everybody's coming in and pitching this piece and that piece, the SEO person, the Yellow Pages person, the social media person, and it's just a very confusing mess for a lot of small business owners. And so the fact that somebody walked in and said, we're going to start with strategy and we are going to then apply tactics in a very systematic way to get to here, and it's going to cost this set amount, was actually extremely exciting to the small business owners that I was pitching this to. And so consequently, I filled my practice very quickly doing that. And that's when I really knew that this idea of marketing as a system and documenting and creating a set of tools that could be replicated was going to be what I was going to spend the rest of my working career on. Now, after I got rambling there, I forgot really the essence of the second half of your question.
Well, the 7 steps, the actual 7 steps that you talk about for marketing small business.
Right. So if I was going to create, and say that marketing is a system, I actually had to have what looked like a system, right? And so my approach to working with small business owners really comes along kind of these lines: the foundation, which is strategy before tactics, and that shouldn't sound as revolutionary as it ends up sounding when you talk to small business owners. But everybody's talking about this thing of the week: Facebook. I should be on this. I should be doing that. And what we do is we first step back and say, okay, who is your ideal client? And by ideal, we mean, who really benefits from what you do? Who can you help the most? Who can you help the fastest? It's not just a matter of, hey, I sell XYZ. Anybody who needs XYZ, that's my ideal client. We want those clients we like working with. We want those clients that expect to pay us a premium because they have a certain issue that we can really address. So our ideal client. But then, and we've touched on this a couple times, we absolutely have to find a way to stand out, to differentiate ourselves in a way that is useful and remarkable to who we're trying to pitch, and really almost get yourself into the place where you're changing the context of how they see your entire industry. So, for example, when I walk in and tell somebody I'm going to install a marketing system, I can tell you with a high degree of certainty that no other marketing consultant has come in there and said that, that they're all talking about, pitching this angle and that angle, and this idea of really gaining control of their marketing with a system is so appealing that they can no longer really compare me to that other person that's selling, a widget or a tactic. So that part of the strategy is extremely important. Well, now today, and I didn't use this term in 2006 necessarily because we've evolved some, but today content has really become the voice then of strategy. And so we actually develop an entire, content plan that is its primary purpose is to use content to move people or to guide people along the journey that they want to take. And that, you may recall, is the third part of our foundation, which is the marketing hourglass. And that is just understanding, the customer journey and the behaviors, guiding them through the behaviors of know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, and refer. So those, that's the foundation. Well, today now we also then have to think about how we're going to build a total online presence that allows us to generate leads and convert leads. And then there's the kind of the 7-step, or the last step, is all of the planning and analysis and metrics and calendar that go into operating the system.
Yeah, and for the listener, I'll have those all put into the action plan, because it's a lot of great stuff. And this is not, again.
That was the 30,000-foot plan that swooped in a couple times at about 100 feet. Yeah,
exactly. That was good. So, and this is not just for business owners. This is for people who volunteer for a nonprofit or have a message that they're trying to get out to a certain constituency. It's very important stuff. So, and it's all very relevant. So I will have those sort of outlined in the action plan here too. Now, John, you have a new book out, SEO for Growth. For the person who doesn't know what SEO is, what is that, and why do we need it?
Well, so SEO, or search engine optimization, was always kind of the game of, how do we trick or understand, what Google's looking for, so that we can get our content to rank above our competitors when somebody turns to a search engine. Well, ultimately all Google wants to do is if you turn to a search engine, or you turn to Google and you type in a phrase, they want to make sure that they are delivering you the most relevant, most useful, most authoritative content possible. That's their whole job. And they've just gotten a lot better at it. And so all these kind of dark art, search engine optimization, black hat, kind of under the hood things that people associate with SEO are really no longer part of the game. Search engine optimization, however, I think and why we intentionally chose the word growth as opposed to SEO for clicks or SEO for traffic, is that search engine optimization today, I think, is really the crossroads for how you take your website, which is not a brochure, it is actually a marketing tool, and you blend that with your content, and you then use search engine optimization to both optimize your strategy, your website, and your content in a way that for those people who are now found online, doing business online, which is about 99% of the businesses out there, that you actually stand the best chance of having your content, your website, your business show up when somebody turns to a search engine and searches on the kinds of things that you address.
And I think every marketer knows, John, where's the best place to hide a dead body, right?
I think it's on, it might actually just be at the bottom half of page one now.
Right. Most people say the second page of Google, but yeah, man, nobody's going past the fold. So yeah, if you're online, if you're a business, if you're an organization wants to get found on the internet, you gotta show up in Google and up high.
And it's really changed. I want to go back to that. I mean, we talked about that first step of strategy before tactics in my system. Well, we've brought SEO practices into that. The practice of keyword research now is how we help people define or refine who their ideal client is. It's how we help them understand the intent that their ideal client has when they turn to a search engine. And it's in some cases, it's how we understand the journey they take to find products and services like ours. And so it really has, people used to build a website, put content on it, and then go get it SEO'd. And I think today, we have to put that as really part of the fundamental soup as part of strategy.
And for the listener who wants to learn more about SEO and understand how to use SEO for growth of their own company, business, organization, SEOforgrowth.com. Is that right?
Yeah, that's where that's the site for the book. Obviously, you can get the book itself on Amazons and Barnes and Nobles of the world. And really, this is a book that even if you think, well, I'm just not really going to mess with that part of the elements for my business. This is as much as anything to teach web designers and entrepreneurs what they should be asking somebody who's going to do that work for you. So don't think of this as being, in fact, this is not the highly technical SEO book. This is the SEO book that kind of demystifies SEO.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good place to start. Now, John, let's shift a little bit to you personally. You've built an incredible business. I've watched it grow over the years just to more and more. I've seen you on television. I've seen you referenced in major media outlets, your podcast. I mean, my goodness, you've interviewed the biggest names, the Tim Ferrisses, the Seth Godins. I mean, just the Robert Cialdinis. You've interviewed some of these really household names. Some of these folks, and you've really grown this business. I mean, has there been a time where has it been all rainbows and unicorns and butterflies, or has there been a time where you failed and as a result you felt like this isn't working? Maybe I'm not cut out for this business, or maybe there was some sort of self-doubt that you felt, but maybe also how you were able to overcome it and finally get to where you're at.
Yeah, I mean, about once a week, I feel some sort of doubt and panic still today, but I don't know that ever goes away. And that's partly because I shouldn't say anybody, because I'll talk about just my experience, is that I am constantly pushing. I don't ever feel like I'm done. I don't ever feel like coasting. And I don't mean that to say I'm like a hard charging, type A personality. I see what can be done, and I just always want to, do more. And so, sometimes leads you to, you don't turn around enough and see how far you've come sometimes. So you get sort of fixated on that horizon that keeps moving away. And so, that's one of the things that I think you have to stop and do is, just as you said, I mean, I just feel like I'm having fun. I'm doing what I'm doing, but there would be a lot of people that would turn around and say, wow, you've really come a long way. And I think as entrepreneurs, we need to do that every now and then. But in terms of, moments when I just felt like this isn't going to work at all, I don't know that I ever had that. And I think that's due in part to the fact that I'm really curious. I have no problem diving in new directions and figuring out, what new thing is coming. And so I have a lot of fun doing that. I will say that in building my business, I've had a setback or two where, I brought out a product that I thought the world needed, and I hadn't taken enough time to figure out maybe what my market wanted and how they wanted it. And so even though I thought, well, you ought to want this, you ought to need this is perfect for you, it didn't sell as well. And again, a great learning, because, then I went back and in conjunction or collaboration with my marketer or some customers, figured out how to make it better, improve it, and then really have it take off. I'll give you another case in which I've built this network of independent marketing consultants. And in some ways, well, no, not in some ways, in real ways, it is a separate business. The Duct Tape Marketing Consultant Network is a separate business from Duct Tape Marketing. And as such, in the early days, it was kind of pulling me in directions of trying to build two businesses at once. And so I determined that there were a couple folks in the network that I should make partners in that business. And quite frankly, that experience after about a 2-year period was a total disaster. Not monetarily necessarily, nobody died or anything, but it was pulling me in directions I didn't want to go. It was, not allowing us to grow in the way that I wanted to see it grow. And so, after probably a painful kind of 10 months or so, I bit the bullet and bought them out in a way that was allowed me to have full control again. And while that was a tough decision, a year and a half, 2 years later, we are thriving. We've doubled the size of the network, and everybody in the network is much happier. So some learnings, some experiences, and some setbacks in that. But all in all, I think that for me, and this sounds maybe a little naive, but for me, as long as you keep somewhere in your heart, in your head, what you ultimately are trying to bring to the world and what good you're trying to do for the world, I think you ultimately come to the right conclusions. If ultimately me buying back the network was because I believe more small business owners could be helped by me doing so, that made that decision easy.
Yeah, that goes back to what you talked about earlier. If you're doing something that aligns with your passion, I think it's easier to get up after you get knocked down. And it's interesting to hear. I mean, for the listener, we're talking to a veteran entrepreneur here who has made decisions that he had to, go back and make adjustments on. You put out products that didn't do as well as you thought. And so for the newbie entrepreneur, if your first go at it doesn't isn't a huge success, that's okay. I mean, that's part of it, right? The struggle is normal. It's part of it. Even for the veteran entrepreneur, not everything you touch turns to gold. So it's a process. And the other thing you talked about is you kind of face that fear daily. I refer back to another one of my episodes, episode 63. I interviewed a guy named Richard Ryerson, and he's a leadership expert. He's interviewed on his podcast, Steve Forbes and Barbara Corcoran and just a lot of big name entrepreneurs. And he asked Steve Forbes, when does that fear go away? And he said, it doesn't. He goes, it's always there. There's always that fear. And he said, there's always that self-doubt. And so you can't let that stop you. I mean, sure, it's gonna try to push you back. And that's why most people don't take the risk of doing many things, whether it's entrepreneurial or otherwise. That fear is always going to be there. But what you want is on the other side of that fear. So you have to face it. You have to take steps forward. John, so for the listener who is saying, yeah, okay, this all sounds good. I want to move on my business idea. I want to move my organization forward. I know I need better marketing. What's one action they can take? Let's say in the next 24 to 48 hours, what's one action they can take to start moving towards their goals as an entrepreneur or as a leader within their organization?
Well, if they already have a business and an existing clientele, what I always tell people, the first thing you should do is pick out six or eight of your ideal clients and sit down individually or call up individually those 6 or 8 people and just ask them a few questions about, how they found you in the first place, why they stay with you, what you do that others in their industry don't. You really just want to get a sense from them what they value about doing business with you. And I can tell you from experience that it's probably not what you think it is. And it can be very eye-opening. And quite frankly, in many cases, it could be the key to your marketing messaging. And don't, you do have to push on these interviews a little bit. Don't let somebody say, well, you provide great service, because that won't take you very far. Everybody can make that claim, whether it's true or not. So I always tell people you have to have 2 or 3 follow-up questions like, well, what does great service look like to you? Or tell me a story about a time when we provided great service, because listen to those answers, and 9 times out of 10, you will be treated to the core message or the point of differentiation that you should be tapping and communicating. And don't be surprised if it's the little things that they talk about. So that's, if somebody's got an existing business, that is what they need to do. But even somebody who just has a business idea or doesn't really know who their market is or should be, I think this idea of just going out and telling people, here's what I'm thinking about doing, here's who I'm thinking about serving. Now, don't be surprised if a couple people tell you you're nuts or that you shouldn't do that. And why would you want to do that? I mean, don't be dissuaded by that. Now, if everybody's telling you that, maybe you better listen, but know that some people, 50% of the world, is still out there kind of saying, oh, that's, these dreamers and what are they thinking about? So don't be dissuaded by that, but listen to what people say and take it in and try to kind of filter through good ideas and bad ideas, and let people help you kind of wrestle with some of the things that you are struggling with. Don't do it in a vacuum. I think if I go out and do that kind of thing with a group of people that are somewhat qualified, meaning I know that kind of what their interests are and what they want to do. A lot of times, 70% of what I hear is not useful, but there'll be that 30% that are just real nuggets of things that I hadn't seen or hadn't thought about looking at a certain way or hadn't even felt myself. And so look for those nuggets by just talking to people. And kind of the last thing, a lot of entrepreneurs say, well, I've got this idea and I don't want to tell anybody about it.
Yeah, right.
There's a really good chance that there's somebody like 2 houses down in their garage, same idea. So, tell the world, because nobody's going to execute your idea.
Right. Yep.
Go for it.
So man, those 2 pieces of advice are just fantastic pieces. Starting with the second one first, I can't tell you how many people have come to me and said, Jim, I've started a bunch of business over the years. I've had painting business, window cleaning business. I've had a Christmas lighting business. I've had marketing consulting business. I've had built a software. And so a lot of people see me as sort of a serial entrepreneur, and they're coming to me with these ideas. Well, but I want you to sign this non-disclosure agreement first. I'm like, I'm not going to sign a non-disclosure. I don't care. I'm not going to steal your idea, you know. And there's been some great ideas that have come in front of me. Just put them out there. Just put them out there. People aren't going to steal your idea like you think they are. And most people aren't going to execute it. And most people who actually have these ideas aren't going to execute on them anyway. And then the first piece of advice you get, asking questions of your prospective clients or your current clients, ideal clients, that is the single best piece of advice that I've ever heard and that I've seen successful entrepreneurs do and tell me that they did, and that's why they've been successful, is because they asked those questions. They went to the market and said, how can I help you? What do you need? What do you want? And then they created a product to fill that niche and fill that need, and they had instant customers. And it's pretty interesting to hear you give that advice as well. Great advice. So
thanks so much. Yeah.
John, well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm going to actually, let me ask you this one more question. I'm going to have a link to your website. I'm going to have a link to the new book, SEO for Growth, as well as your first book, which it's always been just desktop reference for me. Duct Tape Marketing, your first book, is just an incredible, the most practical book I've ever read on anything in terms of actual practical usage. Just a great book. I'll have links to that in the action plan. Any other books, maybe one, maybe two other business books that you might recommend?
Oh, that's so hard for me to do because people ask me that all the time. So
I would say E-Myth. I'll have a reference at least to that one as well.
That's, for old school folks also, I love The Practice of Management by Peter Drucker. Yeah. Has been a really important book for me. I like Michael Port's books, Book Yourself Solid and Hero Public Speaking are a couple. I just talked to Michael yesterday, so he's top of mind as well. So I'll throw those out. Yeah,
great books. Well, John, thanks so much for coming on the show. Like I said, I've been listening to you for years, reading your books and your blog posts for years. So thanks so much for coming on the show. Tell the listener where they can find you and follow you, etc.
Well, sure. So the easiest place is just ducttapemarketing.com. That's DUCTTAPE marketing.com. And that's blog and podcast and newsletter and webinars all there. And of course, you mentioned SEOforgrowth.com, which is where you can read about my latest book.
Excellent. Thanks so much, John. And for the listener, again, grab the action plan. There's a ton of practical stuff in this action plan. So grab it, jimharshawjr.com/action. And until next time, take the time to get clear on your goals and embrace failure as a stepping stone on your path to success. Success Through Failure is a member of the Athlete on Fire podcast network. Check out all of our shows at athleteonfire.com.